Part 117. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1164. People's fate is truly amazing. In the morning, Gretel was still trudging on the mountain road and saw the outline of the capital in the distance. At noon, Greet was still sitting in the shop next to the square, with the anti-detection barrier open, comfortably watching the sacrifice of the indigenous kingdom, treating it as a large-scale folk event. In the evening, Gretel had been respectfully gathered into the great temple. Smoke filled the air, and the pure gold statue looked down in the tall hall, infinitely solemn and infinitely noble. Brilliant golden light shot out from the eyes of the statue and shrouded Greet steadily. "We have received the oracle." Opposite Gretel, the high priest sat cross-legged with a wooden staff across his knees. At the top of the wooden stick, a cotton rope as thick as a finger is tied. Dozens of colorful ribbons are densely connected to the cotton rope, making it look like a curtain. Each ribbon is woven from dozens of colored threads. Those colorful threads cross and coil into a series of dazzling knots. If you look closely, you will see that each knot has a different color and shape. While the high priest was speaking, he was still twisting the colored threads and flexibly weaving new ribbons. "The great sun god said that he hopes to see you and talk to you. No matter whether the negotiation is successful or not, you are our honored guest. During this period, if you have any requests, you can try to ask us. If the negotiation fails, the barracks and lead weights will cost at most 5 or 10 tons, and that's about it." Greet thought silently. He looked at the young priests lined up silently behind the high priest, and then turned to look at Idion and others behind him. The words on the tip of his tongue turned around and quickly became, "Otherwise, let's talk after we're full." "Ah, of course," the high priest suddenly laughed. His eyebrows relaxed, all the wrinkles on his face suddenly relaxed, and his whole person was filled with joy from the bottom of his heart. "We won't let our guests go hungry. The temple has prepared a sumptuous banquet. Come, please." Large plates and large plates of fragrant food were delivered to the banquet hall like water. Then, Greet saw countless foods that he had never seen or heard of appearing on their dining table. "What's this?" He pointed at a huge square pottery plate, with his limbs bent and kneeling, and his whole body was roasted golden and charred, like an unknown object that looked like a person being beheaded and executed, and asked tremblingly. The high priest smiled and raised his bronze knife, lightly scratched the unknown object, took a leg and put it on his plate. "This is a little alpaca that has been specially raised since childhood and is only used for sacrifices and royal family. Since it was born, in addition to drinking milk, it only eats special herbs and drinks the holy spring flowing from the snow-capped mountains. The taste is very special, you can try it." Gretel had the same feeling as Tang Santang eating ginseng fruit, and ate a piece of roasted whole camel. "Well, except for the taste of salt and chili powder, forgive him for not tasting other otherworldly tastes." Sarala, on the other hand, was holding a whole roasted camel and eating with a smile on her face. "It's delicious, well, it's delicious. Hey, can you pack a few away later? As long as you are my god's honored guest, you can do whatever you want." The high priest nodded and smiled. With a wave of his hand, the waiter waiting next to him brought up another large basin of soup. "What is this? Look at the carapace that has been cut into pieces, the translucent skirt on the edge of the carapace, and the gray-black skin that rolls up and down. It's probably a turtle, or a turtle. However, the size of this turtle is too big." There were also those eggs floating in the soup. Gretel lowered his head and glanced at his fist. It seemed that it was even bigger than his fist. "What kind of turtle is this?" "Oh, this is the emerald turtle," the high priest said without moving his eyebrows. "This is a gift given to us by the mother of the ocean. It usually lives in the deep sea, and we can only get close to it and capture it when it climbs onto the beach to lay eggs. The number that can be captured each year is no more than 20. C. Turtles. At what level are animals protected? Gretel took a sip of the turtle soup and looked at the next dish. The dishes served this time did not need to be introduced by the high priest, he could recognize them at a glance. That thing can be almost 1 meter high, stuck on a gold plate with a diameter of half a meter, and is firmly supported by a frame. I don't know if it is a wooden frame or a gold frame. Downy feathers all over the body are carefully adhered to the body one by one. The back is black, the belly is white, the wings are black, and the neck is light yellow. Emperor penguins. I didn't come here specifically to eat rare animals. Gretel was about to cry but had no tears left. For such a table, it is considered a rare dish for the Sun Temple. The high priest's sincerity in treating guests is very full, but I really can't stand this table of dishes. How about we make some normal dishes? He reluctantly tasted a piece of each and then began trying to fill his stomach with tortillas and fruit. Thank God, these things look normal and are not protecting animals one by one and plants one by one. Looking back, Cyrilla was enjoying her meal, while Bernard was buried in his plate and eating without even looking up. Although Udion eats elegantly, the number of broken bones on the plate is no less than those two, and the volume of the dishes in front of him is no less than those two. I'm done eating. Greet put down the tableware gently. Give yourself a cleansing technique, shake off the greasiness on your face and hands, and stand up with a smile. Iodian, Sarara, you eat slowly, I'll go talk to the sun god. Well, I'll go with you. Sarara instantly stuffed an alpaca leg into her mouth, pulled it from left to right, and pulled out a white bone. She chewed the meat hard and said vaguely, "Definitely. I can just go by myself." Gretel pushed her back to her seat with force. "It's just in this temple, not far away. Besides, the sun god invited us all the way here to have a good talk with me, not to swallow me in one bite." He waved his hand, followed the high priest, and walked into the hall with a smile. The hall had long been cleaned, and the two virgins of the sun held bronze candlesticks and lit a new sacred fire. The smell of herbs and spices rose again and filled the hall. The high priest guided Gretel to sit down on the alpaca blanket. The thick and soft blanket feels delicate and smooth. Although it is not like silk, it at least feels like velvet. No need to ask, it is some kind of alpaca wool specially provided by the royal family or the sun god. Gretel subconsciously stretched his body and sat cross-legged, listening to the whimpering music outside. Blowing the conch trumpet, blowing the animal horn, high and low music, like a long wind passing through the treetops from the top of the mountain. Slowly, slowly, he felt his eyelids drooping a little, and subconsciously lay down on the blanket. Ah, so comfortable. Half asleep and half awake, a human figure condensed with golden light emerged in his consciousness. The figure was vague and his face couldn't be seen clearly, but it made Gretel feel warm and friendly for no reason. He closed his eyes in a daze, feeling himself sinking into the emerald dream. Huh. The figure made a sharp, somewhat annoyed sound. Greet woke up with a start, and suddenly found that his spirit had been affected at some point. If the emerald dream itself didn't have its own identification, that human figure condensed with golden light would have followed me in and sucked it in? Hello. Gretel frowned. He shook his head vigorously. This is not normal. With his mental strength and physical resistance, there was no reason for him to fall asleep for no reason, let alone lose his guard for no reason. To put it bluntly, he has several magical items that protect his mind, including the endless ink pen. I'm sorry, dear guest, I mean no harm. A blonde woman slowly walked out of the white mist and knelt down opposite Gretel. She lifted a handful of her splendid long hair and nodded to Gretel. I am the sun saint in the great temple, the concubine of the great Virakaka, and the daughter of this king. I have the blood of the sun god flowing in my body, so I can easily receive the power of the Father God. Now, Father God speaks to you through me. Her expression suddenly froze, and everything from her face to her eyes was completely blank. When he spoke again, his voice had changed from crisp and soft to deep and thick, with a sacred meaning. "Outsider, you're here. How about it? Have you thought about how to provide me with that kind of power?" Gretel. His first reaction was to search for the sound that could change from a female voice to a male voice, and it could change back and forth on its own. I seem to have seen it somewhere. Is it some kind of epilepsy? At the same time, it causes laryngeal spasm, vocal cord spasm, etc. The blonde woman was silent for a moment, then asked again. His tone was still calm, but there was a hint of impatience and urgency. Gretel shook his head and came back to his senses. "Dear sun god, I want to bring you into the emerald dream and touch that power, but I can't do it yet. You also know that the emerald dream is a dream that belongs to the entire elven community and all those who serve nature. Its power is extremely powerful. Powerful. But..." He raised his voice and spoke quickly. "There is a way that may allow you to touch it in reality. As long as you make a contribution to the world and make a great and unquestionable contribution, the world will naturally give you gifts. Now there is a way." He raised his arm and tried to point deeper into the hall. After thinking about it, he felt that the direction was wrong, so he moved again. I thought about it again, used my mental energy to feel my position, and moved again. The sun goddess on the opposite side, or rather, the sun god descending on the sun goddess, watched Gretel stretch out his arms and spin around. After waiting for 2 rounds, he finally asked, "What do you want to say?" "It's in the big forest to the east of this mountain range." Gretel finally gave up on feeling the southeast, northwest, and northwest at night, in a house, or in a place with a roof. Put down your arms and simply use Silent Phantom to outline a map. In the center of the great forest, in the hinterland, there is a wound in the earth that can never be healed. We already have a method that may be able to cure it, but the power is not enough. If you can help us, I believe that the gifts of the world will be enough to restore your strength. That's where it is." The sun god turned his face, raised his eyes, and looked accurately toward the northeast. His eyes were filled with endless golden light, his gaze was distant, and his voice was like murmuring in a dream. "I know it. A long time ago, I was there and saw 1,000 suns. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. There will be at least 3 days before book reviews can be reopened, so please don't stop leaving book reviews because of this. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right?" Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1165. Virakaka, the sun god, will never forget the first time he opened his eyes and saw the world. At that time, he, or it, did not know that there were day and night in the world, and the rotation of day and night. The first time it woke up from ignorance, it saw a brilliant sun rising in the darkness. Bright, blazing, high in the sky. Even though they were separated by an unknown distance, when the blazing wind and huge vibrations hit it, it was still on the verge of collapse and almost collapsed. In the haze, he felt great admiration, astonishment, and fear. Those tiny, ant-like people emerged from all kinds of strange caves, shouting loudly, "Sun God! Sun God! Sun God!" In such a call, its existence condensed little by little, and its divine body became stronger little by little. It has its own name, Virakaka, its own priesthood, and its own crowd of worshippers. It also gradually became familiar with the sun in the sky, and how to adjust the sun's light to influence and protect those who worship it. However, Virakaka will never forget the bright and glorious sun that rose out of thin air that night. The fireball hung high in the air and lingered for a long time, vomiting endless brilliance and heat. There was a thick circle of clouds surrounding him, and the inside of the cloud ring was bright orange. Even the cloud ring was hard to look at. Not to mention the fireball. Even from an extremely long distance, looking at it, one still thinks that 1,000 suns have risen in the dark night. If he could be that powerful. After Virakaka was condensed and formed, he went to the place where the sun rose several times. The first time and the second time, the strong vibrations forced it to stagger and almost dissipate. I went there again after a long time, and there was only ashes left in the place where the sun rose. There is still a lingering warmth, but the glory and power of the past can no longer be seen. Do you want me to go there? He asked softly. You want me to rekindle that sun? Greed is working hard to give himself detoxification and healing spells. He said why he gets sleepy so easily, and why does the sun god approach him so easily? There are hallucinogenic substances in the incense burned in this temple. Maybe it's in the food you just ate or the drink you drank. Although the other party may not necessarily be poisoning intentionally, in temples, especially temples of wild indigenous people, it is almost routine to use a large amount of various hallucinogenic substances on a daily basis. Those mushrooms, datura, strange plant seeds, leaves, stems and flowers. The priests of the temple burned them in large quantities, refined them, and swallowed them to sublimate their own spirits and make themselves more accessible to God. Gretel himself was actually just accidentally tricked. As a result, halfway through the filming, when asked by the sun god, the healing technique in his hand almost collapsed. Fortunately, he was very proficient in using the spell, so it didn't come back to bite him. Even so, Gretel choked hard. Cough cough cough, cough 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 cough, relight that sun. Do not make jokes. It's so easy to toss it until it goes out, and it's so hard to completely eliminate the trouble. Are you going to blow it up again? The secret realm of elves can't help but explode again. He explained his plan carefully. How to extinguish the flames there, how to eliminate the damage to nature, and how to obtain the gifts of nature. After I finished speaking, I was afraid that the sun god would not understand, so I used my own example. When you felt that I triggered the gifts of nature, that's when I started to extinguish the mind flames in the emerald dream. If you help heal the wounds of nature in reality, I think you will definitely get the gifts of the world. The sun god Virakaka listened carefully and thought. After a moment of silence, another question suddenly came up. I understand your request. So, you just want to extinguish the flame left by the sun that has not been extinguished for so many years. If I go in there and take away all the power there, can I also get the world? Gift. Gretel slowly opened his eyes. Take away all the power there, take away all the radioactive ores, even take away all the neutrons and various rays that are constantly emitted. Dear sun god, I'm not saying whether you can do it, I'm afraid that after you take away these radioactive elements, you will drop scum along the way back from the big forest. Imagine an area of strong radiation pollution is drawn in the tropical rainforest, how many years will it take to clean it up? If something like this really happens, I don't know if the consciousness of the world will give you a gift or pounce on you and beat you to death. The possibility is really high. He shivered subconsciously. And Virakaka was already excited. You see, you need to repair nature, and I need strength. If I can collect the flames of the sun at that time and bring them back to the plateau, I will be a big step closer to the real sun in the sky. This is good for both parties. Thing, right? You have to collect that flame and bring it back to the plateau. What if it keeps falling off on the plateau? What is the half-life of uranium? It seems like 700 million years. Or how many billions of years? If you cannot restrain the power of radioactive uranium and keep leaking it on this plateau where you are believed in and worshipped by you, will the people here still be able to live? Also, if a large amount of radioactive material was leaked, something similar to a nuclear fission explosion should have occurred in the elf secret realm at that time. The real sun in the sky, the flame of the star, should be nuclear fusion. As the sun god, you should try to touch the mystery of fusion. Why are you picking up nuclear fission waste? Isn't it true that the longer you live, the more you will come back? Greet shook his head, shook his head, shook his head vigorously. Dear sun god, after the explosion in the center of the elf secret realm, to this day, there is still no living thing alive in the core area. Outside the core area, in all polluted places, all living things have been injured, distorted, and endured long-term pain. He lowered his eyebrows and gently stroked the blanket under him with his fingertips. The people of this kingdom believe in you, worship you, and praise you. If you accidentally pollute this land when you bring back fire, how will you let them live? Virakaka, the sun god, was silent for a moment. Gretel struck while the iron was hot and used light and shadow to create the land he had seen while standing outside the polluted area. Blackened, desolate, and dead. All animals and plants that are struggling to survive take on a violent and twisted appearance, as if crawling out of the legendary hell. Virakaka was completely silent. After a long time, he let out a long sigh, causing the smoke in the temple to billow. Let me see the effect of this first. After I hold a large-scale blood sacrifice and regain some strength, I will go and see with you. Wait. No. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. The cat wants a lot of book reviews. Without book reviews, it feels so lonely. Thanks to @bookfriend 2022111144228054 for the reward of 100 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1166. Blood Sacrifice. Stop. Gretel almost jumped. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that he was sitting lazily on the wool blanket, his posture was not good enough, and his athletic ability was not strong, he might have really jumped up. Blood sacrifice. Massive blood sacrifice. How many people do you want to kill? He asked in a trembling voice. How many people do you need to kill? Isn't today's blood sacrifice enough? Today is just a small-scale blood sacrifice on the wool blanket opposite, the sun saint, or in other words, the sun god. Virakaka's pupils were flowing with golden light, and her voice was faint. If you want me to recover a little, even temporarily, these people are not enough. 10 times is just enough for me to take a breath. If I want to do something big, it will take at least 100 times. She, or he, had an indifferent expression and a calm tone. The eyes looking out of the hall are like the statue of God in the middle of the hall, overlooking the humans worshipping in front of him. Greet shuddered slightly. This look is like looking at livestock or ants. However, God can treat human beings in this way, especially the human beings who worship him and worship him. From the perspective of human beings, he himself cannot stand idly by. Although he is a magician from Nevis and a natural priest with half-elf blood, he has no emotional connection with these indigenous residents and is very different in status. However, whether from the perspective of a healer, a doctor, or simply a civilized person, there is an old saying that goes well. I can't bear to see him die. Gretel was thinking rapidly. You must persuade, but you must pay attention to a method. I want to make the sun god feel that I am standing in his position. How many people are there in your entire kingdom? In the Sifang kingdom, the largest number of local officials in each direction is 40,000 households. Plus the territory directly under the king's jurisdiction, the maximum, is only 300,000 households. 400,000 households. Virakaka, the sun god, did not answer. Maybe he didn't bother to answer, maybe he didn't know the answer. Gretel didn't wait for him to speak, and continued eagerly. Even if there are 5 people in a household, 2 million people are a big deal, right? How much damage will it do to the country's strength if you kill 10,000 people at once? How many people can you kill? How can you still carry out such a large-scale blood sacrifice? Several times. If the people killed were old people, how many people in such a poor kingdom could live to old age? If the victims are babies or young children, not to mention the risk of transportation on the road, parents who have lost their children and are heartbroken will try their best to stop having children, or even drown and abandon the baby. If those who are killed are young adults, out of 2 million people, if a few dozen young adults are killed just because of blood sacrifices, there will be big problems in production and life in all parts of society. Previously in the Kingdom of Eagles, those who were used for blood sacrifices were prisoners and invaders, so Greet did not say anything, but here, those who were used for blood sacrifices were all citizens of the kingdom. Even if they are slaves, it cannot change the fact that they are citizens. Don't you know that these citizens and the faith they provide are the stable source of your strength? Only when their faith is firm can your strength be strong. Only when their number increases can your strength expand. So what the sun god replied coldly. It was hard for Gretel to imagine that a god whose priesthood was the sun would comment in such an indifferent tone. They are my citizens and my slaves. If I can't hold on any longer, what else do I need them to do? But Greet said anxiously. Viracaka suddenly raised his eyes, the golden light in his eyes was like lightning, which made Greet feel tight in his chest. But I can't wait any longer. The invaders from the north have seriously injured me, and I haven't recovered yet. Over the years, I have become weaker and weaker, and the danger is still approaching. I have a premonition that I will fall. The danger is coming. Is the Holy Sea of Glory about to invade again? Gretel suddenly raised his head and looked towards the north, or, in other words, the direction he knew might be the north. If he is a member of the Glory Holy See and wants to completely annex this kingdom, then the first step is to find a few legends to besiege this injured demigod. Beat it until it dies completely, or beat it until it falls into a deep sleep, unable to answer any prayers. Then, happily, capture the royal family, capture the priests, plunder the people. The sun god obviously knew this too. Therefore, even if it drinks poison to quench its thirst, it must regain some strength as soon as possible. If forced to the point of life and death, maybe the sun god would order a blood sacrifice for all the citizens so that he could survive. How long do you have? Greet asked softly. How long will it take for that crisis to come? Before that, is it possible to heal your injuries? Let's think of other ways. It won't be long. The sun god's first words made Gretel's heart sink. In 2 more months, the days will be the shortest and the sun's power will be at its weakest. If the enemy wants to launch an attack, they will definitely choose that day. If I want to fight, I must recover, or partially recover, before that day. There are still 2 months, right? Gretel blurted out. The shortest day is the winter solstice. Well, this is the southern hemisphere, so it should be the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere. By the way, what month is it now? Since arriving in the Eagle Country, the dry season and rainy season, and the rainy and dry seasons after arriving in the rainforest have been lost. Life has been completely confusing. No matter, there are still 2 months left. Greet shook his head vigorously and continued to persuade. There are still 2 months. If it really comes to a life or death moment, I won't stop you, but for now, let's do our best and use other methods to help you recover a little bit. How about that? He stood up from the blanket, paced back and forth, and spoke faster and faster. Silent Phantom on the map outlined, a long straight line is drawn, pointing to the center of the forest. It won't even take 10 days to fly at full speed from here to the secret realm. You first gather a batch of supplies, and we will fly to the secret realm and conduct an experiment so that you can see the effect. If it works, you can then gather a large amount of supplies to obtain the gifts of the world. The sun god frowned and said nothing. Gretel looked at him sincerely. Can you let me take a look at your injuries? Or, maybe, I can. Presumptuous. The sun god shouted angrily. Seeing Gretel subconsciously leaning up to avoid his anger, but his eyes were still clear and concerned, he paused and sighed quietly. Forget it, I'll let you take a look, little guy, with your power, even if you see it, what can you do? The golden light suddenly skyrocketed. A hazy golden mist shrouded from the void, enveloping Greet into a boundless space with no top, no bottom, no distance, no near, and no boundaries. In the guest house next to the temple, Idion, Sarara, and Loxia looked back at the same time. Above the temple, the sound of breaking through the air came closer and closer. Archmage Baebo drove the airship, slowed down and circled, constantly correcting the direction with the compass. Here, should be very close, right here, I feel it, little Greet is down here. Before confiscating the airship, I tried to speak to the owner of this place. When I sensed it, a golden mist suddenly surged, swallowing up Greet's breath. Archmage Baebo. Who is that? Don't hurt my little junior brother. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to etting07518 for tipping 1000 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1167. The airship hovered above, circling. Although Archmage Baebo was anxious, he was not irrational. The most important thing in the magician's battle is to save yourself. Extend the distance, pay attention to maneuver, lock on the opponent, and wait for opportunities to attack. Rushing forward rashly is what soldiers can do. What's more, the thing that enveloped little Greet, no matter what it was very, very strong. Archmage Baebo feels that even if he fights with all his strength, he may not be able to win it. So he distanced himself and circled hard in front of the temple, outside the golden mist, where it was estimated that the opponent could not attack. While hovering, he shouted, and his voice spread far away through the loudspeaker on the airship. Don't hurt my junior brother. Our teacher is the Lord of Thunder. He is a legendary mage. He is an existence that can kill the indigenous gods. If you don't want to be our enemy, don't touch my junior brother and send him out. The sound was like thunder, shaking the whole sky. Suddenly, large groups of people poured out of the palace and temple, looking up and watching. What? What kind of monster? A big fish in the ocean? A talking monster fish? Why did it fly here? Bold. Arrogant. How dare you fly above the palace? Blasphemer. Flying over the temple and covering up the glory of the sun god, you are seeking death. Knock it off. Hit it down. This was the shout, but for a while no one dared to take action. There was no way, the airship flew too high and its movements were too flexible. It couldn't be shot down by throwing a few spears at it. And if the spear cannot hit this strange-looking devilfish with several silver dorsal fins spread out, not to mention how the opponent counterattacks, the spear will fall and hit one of our own. And flying up to fight, without the king's order or the high priest's order, who would dare to take off rashly? Especially when the sun god is still coming, is it blasphemy? Udian and others were also shocked. Standing in the courtyard, looking up, I saw the hovering airship at a glance. Sarala said hey and waved her hand upward. Master Baebo. Master Baebo. Archmage Baebo breathed a sigh of relief quietly. Sarala is here, and there doesn't seem to be any anxious expression on his face. Greet is probably fine? That golden mist that engulfed him. Probably, maybe, not hostile, or is it still within control? He breathed a sigh of relief too early. Just halfway through, the golden mist below surged. Swallowed Bernard and Appa, swallowed Cyrilla, swallowed Lucia and Idion. Archmage Baebo felt his eyes blurred. The scene in front of him had changed from an airship cockpit with a steering wheel and a pull rod to an endless wilderness. There was endless void beneath his feet, a thick golden mist in front of him, and above his head, there was a faint golden light with a hint of tired bronze. The airship, the mountains, the palaces, temples, and people below were all gone. What's wrong with me? Am I under an illusion? I been attacked? Archmage Baebo was slightly startled. However, his reaction was not to attack, defend, or maneuver immediately, but to release his mental power. The airship's defense is not that unreliable. Even if someone can attack him through the airship can still take the first shot. On the contrary, if you attack randomly, you may hit your own people. If you defend randomly, it is better to trust the defensive magic that is always hanging on your body. If you maneuver randomly, you are more likely to crash into the mountain without losing your vision. The current situation is more like being pulled into his demi-plane by the teacher. If the opponent is the sun god, the way he unfolds his kingdom is indeed similar to the demi-plane of the legendary mage. Don't panic, don't panic. Archmage Baebo's spiritual power spread out in the air. He is about to touch the legendary Archmage. His spiritual power resonates with the material world and forms an independent demi-plane. In fact, it is only one step away. Although I cannot resist the kingdom of God, it is not difficult to protect myself. The substantial mental power immediately pushed away the golden mist, forming a small independent space. The steering wheel, levers, portholes, all appeared again in front of Archmage Baebo. What was more vivid in his perception was the mental power burning as fiercely as several flames. Hey! Sun God! Idion's face sank as he held down the hilt of the moon blade. The half-step legendary warrior's blood boiled, burning in the air like a torch, pushing away the surrounding golden mist. He stopped in front of several companions and raised his head to the sky. We don't mean any harm. Don't do anything to us. The legend of the elves is in the big forest. He knows we are here. There are several legends who are already on their way. Next to Idion, Lucia's spiritual power was brilliant, even covering a wider area than his companion's blood energy. The elf spellcaster pursed his lips and remained silent. However, 3 dazzling silver stars were already flying rapidly around her, obviously capable of taking action at any time. But the most eye-catching one is Cyrilla. The silver dragon girl has transformed into her original form, spread her wings, and gathered Bernard and Appa under her wings. In terms of the essence of power, adult silver dragons may not be as solid as the half-step legend, but in terms of the total amount of blood, magic power, and spiritual power, one can surpass the other. Hey! What's this weird place? Where did you take Gretel? Let him go. The golden mist fluctuates constantly. Although the sun god is the god of the kingdom, his kingdom has not completely descended after all. Faced with the simultaneous impact of these forces, the power was only transmitted through a priest, and it was really hard to withstand it for a while. Once, twice, 3 times, after several consecutive fluctuations, he suddenly retracted. Gretel was left sitting in the main hall, facing the sudden convergence of the vision and the sun goddess who fainted in front of her, with a face full of confusion. What happened? We were having a good chat just now, and the sun god agreed to let me take a look at its divine body. Where is the wound, and why did it suddenly take it back? I haven't understood it yet, and I haven't finished chatting with him yet. Why did everything suddenly disappear? Is the sun god exhausted? Unable to maintain strength, are you going to fall asleep again? Before he could figure it out, the white mist in front of the statue suddenly started rolling like boiling water. Solidified, shaped, dyed with golden light layer by layer, and then, whipped over like a whip. Oh! Gretel ran out. Escape from the hall, escape from the corridor, and flee in the direction of Idion and the others. Before they even merged, I saw a golden light shining from the top of the Temple of the Sun, like a searchlight pole, a spear, or a steel knife, sweeping upward. Why? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1168. The airship dodges. The airship dives. The airship suddenly disappeared, and Archmage Baebo appeared on the spot, flashing, flashing, flashing. Facts have proven that an experienced, near-legendary combat mage can withstand several attacks against gods without any burdens. The premise is that the other party is only an indigenous god. According to the rating of the council, he is probably only a demigod. Moreover, the demigod was seriously injured and compromised, and he had not yet made a full attack, and there was another half-step legend beside him. Although the half-step legend did not take action, he just watched from the side. At the same time, under Gretel's urging, he tried his best to shout for him. Don't fight. He meant no harm. We are all our own people, we can sit down and talk. After shouting back and forth maybe 10 or 20 times, the golden light in the sky slowly subsided. Either the sun god Virakaka has restrained his anger and no longer pursues this rash outsider, or he has run out of power. Gretel waited in fear. God bless, this sun god must calm down and be willing to have a good talk with everyone. He didn't want to be kicked out directly by the angry sun god, not allowed to come back, and hunted down if he showed up within the country. You should know that things like mineral veins generally exist in mountains and are less likely to exist in forests, and this mountain range, known as the backbone of the earth, is undoubtedly the largest mountain range in the southern continent. He doesn't want to have to bypass the kingdom's land for no apparent reason and go to remote areas, where the power of the sun god is weak, or to places controlled by the glory holy sea, to look for minerals again. 100,000 tons of borax ore, at least 100,000 tons of lead ore, what a huge project this is, how happy it is to be able to cooperate with the authorities. Why does he have to work by himself even though he is full? The golden light converged and turned into a thin golden mist, slowly overflowing from the entrance of the main hall of the temple. At the same time, there was a rumble and rumble outside, and a large group of soldiers rushed towards them. Who is it? Who blasphemed my god? Gretel's face froze. Well, the commotion of senior brother's arrival was so great that the local palaces and temples were alarmed. The so-called we have noticed. We are making solemn representations. We strongly protest. Although the final right of interpretation belongs to the sun god himself, whether it is a royal family or a temple, one must still show their devotion to the sun god. Fortunately, when the soldier rushed to the door, the high priest of the sun god temple also hurried out of the room carrying his robe. He was holding the hem of his robe with one hand, and holding a long staff connected to a disc with the other hand. Golden light flowed from the staff. My god has an oracle. The high priest placed his long staff on the square at the entrance of the hall, shouted with all his strength. While shouting, the golden disc cast in the shape of the sun at the top of the long staff in his hand emitted brilliant golden light. The great sun god Virakaka, an oracle has come down. The person who comes is not an enemy. Not an enemy. The other person is a guest, so you must invite him in properly and not be an enemy. Gretel breathed a huge sigh of relief. Thank God, this sun god finally has sense, or rather, he won't get angry and go to war just for the sake of face. Think about it too. A god with a lifespan of thousands of years, at least thousands of years, a god who rules hundreds of thousands of households and millions of subjects, a strong man who is at least as powerful as a legend, or even more powerful. He is at least, you have a brain, right? Even if you have no brains, after so many years of overlooking the change of dynasties, overlooking the birth and death of tribes, overlooking the conquests of armies, overlooking the establishment and destruction of cities, it must have seen it all. You are a guest. Our friends. It comes with good intentions. Archmage Baebo is his senior brother. What he wants is nothing more than his own safety. Behind his group, there is more than one legendary powerhouse. The sun god should be able to understand these words. In fact, this god does understand. Whether it understands the difference between the enemy and ourselves, or is forced by the opponent's power, in short, it does not deliberately hurt anyone, it just shows its strength and anger. I am God. I am the supreme sun god of this kingdom. You just flew over like this, shouting in the sky not to touch your people, what do you mean? If I take action seriously, I can kill you. After the attack, Archmage Baebo put away his airship, ran around in the sky, and finally hid in an unknown cave under the mountain. With the people on Greet's side shouting loudly, he had earned enough face, so he stopped. After stopping, he still made a friendly move. Let the high priest deliver the oracle and drive back the aggressive army that came to defend the gods and the majesty of the royal family. Then, the high priest came over panting, holding the staff. Seeing a silver dragon standing there, a look of surprise flashed through his eyes, and then he buried his head deeply. My god said that he was disturbed by the visitor just now and interrupted the communication. Moreover, the sun goddess who carries his power has reached her limit. If your guest is interested, I hope we can continue the discussion in detail tomorrow. Let's talk about it in detail tomorrow. He had just been interrupted by his senior brother, but he hadn't seen clearly the scene shown by the sun god yet. The high priest personally arranged for people to go out and convey the sun god's will with Gretel outside. Gretel blessed the amplification technique and shouted twice in person. A flash of light flashed in front of him, and Archmage Baebo was already standing in front of him. As soon as he saw Gretel, the Archmage breathed a long sigh of relief, and his tense body relaxed completely. Little Greet, you scare me to death. Really, why do you always provoke beings that you can't defeat at all? Well, it's not what I thought. Besides, the other party is obviously quite friendly. If you hadn't rushed down in such a hurry, I would have almost seen his injuries clearly. Gretel lowered his head obediently and was criticized, complained, and had his chestnuts knocked open by his senior brother. After this round of emotional outburst was over, he introduced his senior brother into the temple, put on a smiling face, and introduced him to everyone present. This is Master Idion. The two parties introduced each other and paid tribute to each other. Then, Archmage Baebo pulled Gretchen into the room and told him everything he had brought this time, as well as the teacher and their recent research results. The teacher said, "Let me stay with you for a while to see if there is anything you need to study that you cannot do due to your own abilities. Also, it is not easy for you to come forward when negotiating with others. Senior brother can represent Thunderhorn, come forward." "Thank you so much." They touched each other head to head, handed over and discussed the whole night, and the lighting in the room stayed on until midnight. At 8 or 9 o'clock the next morning, when the sun gradually became stronger, the meeting began again. This time, the person who came forward to act as the carrier of the advent was another sun goddess, whose hair was much shorter than the previous one. She sat down in front of Gretel, and soon her blonde hair suddenly became soft, and her eyes quietly shed a golden light. "Mr. Gretel, I have always been kind to you and your companions in the golden mist." The clear and soft voice of the sun goddess turned into the deep, majestic, high and far-reaching voice of the sun god. "However, you must give an explanation for rashly breaking into my country, disturbing my people, and hovering above the temples and palaces." "Elder brother did this because he was worried about my safety." Gretel bowed his head and saluted honestly. He didn't mean any harm. But, I'm still very sorry. If you allow me, senior brother is willing to offer a batch of treasures to the temple to express his apology. Although the actual value of those treasures is difficult to describe. Greed took a look and found that most of these scrolls, magic crystals that sealed spells, and various magic props were the work of Archmage Baebo during his experiments, or even failed ones. However, it is still very rare in this indigenous country. You can exchange it with the natives for a lot of gold, silver, various gems, and various warcraft materials. It was used as an offering to the sun god, and it really caused a lot of bleeding. The eldest brother just wanted to ease the relationship between him and the sun god for his sake, so that he could do things better. He must remember this love. I own this kingdom, all the earth and sky here, the sun god snorted coldly. What treasures can compare with my majesty? But for your sake, I, the great and supreme sun god, will not care about him. Huh, if it weren't for you, such an intruder, I can just crush him to death. Just blow it. Half of this kingdom has been bulldozed by the glory holy sea, all the land here, including the rainforest, is not yours, and half of the mountains have been robbed by others. The most valuable silver mountain at present has completely fallen into the hands of others and cannot be retrieved for decades. As for the sky, it seems like anyone can fly, including feathered serpents and condors. Not to mention the glory of the sun god, the Lord of Glory is nothing, but the version has been updated to include infrared and ultraviolet rays. Gretel cursed crazily in his heart. However, in order to clean up the radioactive contamination in the elven secret realm and to borrow as much power as possible from the kingdom's officials, he still put on a smile and said seriously, "Some of the research brought by the teacher this time will be of great help to us in treating Dottie's wounds. Correspondingly, it will also be of great help in treating your injuries." Virakaka, the sun god, snorted softly. Gretel bowed his head and saluted. "If possible, could you ask senior brother to come with me to take a look at your injuries? He is more capable than me, has more experience than me, and has better eyesight than me. If he can see it with his own eyes, he will definitely be able to better help you heal." "No." The golden light in the sun goddess's eyes fluctuated violently. Obviously, the sun god is still a little afraid of the power of Archmage Baebo, and it is not that he can quickly crush him to death as he said. He is not needed. He is not allowed to enter. Anyone who disrespects me is not qualified to see my divine body with his own eyes. Mr. Gretel, if you want to see it, just come in. If you don't want to see it, forget it. I want to see. Gretel almost blurted out. When the words came to his lips, he quickly modified them. "Great sun god, thank you for your trust in me. With your grace, I have allowed me to see your divine body with my own eyes and experience your noble power." Ouch, so sour, so sour. Hey, facing a god who is much more powerful than him and the half-step legend, trying to flatter him is already the lowest cost method of communication. In the end, he shouldered everything alone. He is too difficult. Gretel tried his best to rinse his sore teeth with saliva, calmed his mind, and raised his eyes to look upward. Just like yesterday, the soft, hazy golden mist came quietly and enveloped him completely. There is no top, no bottom, no distance, no near, the light shines brightly in the boundless space. Gretel calmly took out a pair of sunglasses and put them on himself. Sunglasses for mages to observe strong light, carved from black crystal, can be sold in the Alchemy Guild for 100 contribution points. Of course, the one Gretel used was not even the simple version. The pair of sunglasses he wore not only blocked light and protected his eyes, but were also engraved with dense runes, which could filter certain harmful light and defend against certain magic activated by direct light. The Alchemy Guild's price is 1000 contribution points, which is the price after VIP discount. Customers do not have enough permissions to even see such high-end products. Greed put on his sunglasses carefully and looked up again. As expected, what was slowly turning in the void and belching flames was a bright and blazing sun. At first glance, the color of the sun is similar to that of the scorching sun in the sky, almost pure white in color. If you look closely, you will see that the outer ring of the big sun wheel is burning with faint blood flames. The color of the light emitted around the blood flame is also quite dim, ranging from orange to golden to bronze, constantly falling, and then trying to rise again. After waiting patiently for a moment, the sun in the sky turned half a circle, and Gretel suddenly opened his eyes wide. This. A black crack. A black crack spanning at least half a palm's width on a golden disc 2 feet in diameter was embedded deeply into the sun. Gretel almost thought that he heard the intense, non-stop sizzling sound of the black and golden clashing. You saw it? In the void, majestic and magnificent sounds echoed from all directions. Virakaka, the sun god, sighed tiredly. This is the injury those people left me. After so many years, it still hasn't healed. I've tried my best to treat it, but it still can't heal. Gretel, I need your strength, the pain you bring. A kind of power. Gretel stared at the black crack. It was surrounded by large groups of blood flames, constantly entangled with black cracks and constantly devouring it. In this process, the blood flames also continued to erode the body of the sun god, constantly reducing its power and dimming its light. Gretel was very suspicious that these blood flames were the power that the sun god absorbed from the blood sacrifice. It can use this to slightly relieve the injury, but the pain and resentment of those sacrifices also linger on the sun god for a long time. How should such an injury, such a serious injury that tears the sun apart, be treated? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. P.S. I was reminded today that I discovered that the chapter number was wrongly written for a long time, and it was 100 serial numbers backwards. I have contacted the editor to change it. Please bear with me these days. Thanks to Luo Shui Yishang for the 10,000 starting coin reward. Recommend a new book, Crisis Management Game in this issue of Sanjiang. The author is Tu Tutu, the veteran author who previously wrote Live Broadcast, Wilderness Challenge and Live Broadcast, Hunting Wilderness. I have read his first 2 books, and this book has a new breakthrough. Combining counter-terrorism, simulator flow, and the combination of games and reality, the work has a very tight rhythm. Readers who like military literature will be very interested. Readers like Mao Mao who know nothing about military literature can also read it without difficulty. Introduction. Crisis management, also called emergency response, refers to preventing and reducing the occurrence of natural disasters, accidents, public health and social security incidents, controlling, mitigating, and eliminating the harm caused by incidents, protecting people's lives and property, and maintaining public safety. Order. Guji, a former SWAT officer, downloaded a crisis management game. Looking at the cold muzzle of the gun, he now had 2 choices. Endurance improvement, small, or fighting specialization, small. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jiolan 2020. Chapter 1169. Such scars. Greed racked his brains desperately. It's a pity that he knows too little about gods, or the power at the legendary level, to be able to see through the nature of this scar at a glance. His power is too weak to study the sun god's power and the black scar attached to his body through direct exploration. That powerful, fiery existence seemed very close, but in fact it was infinitely far away. It was so far away that even if he stretched his mental power to the limit, the body of the sun god was still somewhere far away from him. And if the divine body got too close, Gretel had no doubt that the high-intensity light and heat would definitely burn his bones into dregs before he got close enough. Even, with his power, he could only see the image shown to him by the sun god. Vision can form illusions. The higher the power level, the stronger the visual distortion effect. For example, at the atomic level, the configuration of protons, neutrons, atomic nuclei, and outer electrons is very likely to be completely different from what a layperson can understand by looking at pictures. Greed had no choice but to bite the bullet and try his best to communicate with the other party in words. Your power, what is the nature of your power? I am the great sun god. My power is the power of the sun. In the void, rumbling sounds continued to echo. Gretel silently complained. The power of the sun? The power of the sun is the power of nuclear fusion, a process in which the nuclei of hydrogen atoms, mainly deuterium, with very small masses merge with each other to generate a large amount of energy and generate a new element, helium. You keep saying that your power is the power of the sun. Have you touched the mystery of nuclear fusion? Of course, Greed would not dare to ask such a question. In this world, he has just observed things like alpha rays, beta rays, and gamma rays. He has not even opened the door to the nucleus, and nuclear fission is out of the question. As for nuclear fusion, he has not yet begun to verify whether there is nuclear fusion in this world, let alone confirm that the sun produces energy through nuclear fusion. And, even if the power of the sun is nuclear fusion, what does that have to do with this indigenous sun god? In the legendary battles he had watched before, the energy of a legendary spell seemed to be incomparable to an atomic bomb explosion. If this sun god could really rub a hydrogen bomb with his hands, how could he be hurt by a mere legend? Nuclear fusion and other things should be ruled out first. Gray regained his composure and said slowly. I understand. Your power is infinite brilliance, enough to illuminate the entire earth, and infinite heat, enough to give life to all things. Is that so? You're barely right. In the sky, a reluctant hum came from afar. Greed pondered for a moment. Great sun god, why does your power drop to its lowest point on the day when the day is shortest? A moment of silence. Gretel pricked up his ears and listened, thinking. If it is truly the power of nuclear fusion, then there is no reason why it should reach its lowest point on the winter solstice. It weakens in winter, grows in summer, weakens at night and grows during the day. Does this mean that the sun god in front of him only uses part of the sun's light and heat, and he has no way to achieve nuclear fusion? Isn't this always like this? The sun god finally gave the answer. Greed shrugged. Well, sure enough, just use this light and heat. Maybe it can be stored or partially simulated, but most of the time, it might just be refraction. In other words, the essence of this being worshipped as the sun god by the natives may be a huge lens. Greed decided to ask again to verify his judgment. The most important criterion for judging the power of the sun god is topics related to solar eclipses. If there was a solar eclipse in the sky, I mean, something was covering the sun and making the sky dark, would it interfere with your power? No. There is no such thing. The voice of sun god Virakaka wavered for the first time. The sound was like thunder, echoing in this space. For a moment, even the golden mist in the space seemed to be about to collapse. Greed was startled and quickly changed the subject. One thing to note when asking about medical history is not to arouse the patient's irritable and confrontational emotions. This sun god really knows how to make trouble when he gets excited and irritable. In other words, even if he didn't mean to make trouble, if he vented his emotions, he wouldn't be able to eat and walk around. Great sun god, that villain who blasphemed you and harmed you, what is the nature of his power? He quickly changed the topic. In other words, what is the color and shape of that power? Why does its power hover around you and cannot disappear for a long time? He tore me apart. He blasphemed me. Virakaka, the sun god, was excited again. Gretel waited patiently for a while before hearing his description. I have never seen such power, it is also light, extremely bright light, shining light, it seems to be white, and it also seems to condense all the colors I have seen. Putting a prism in front of white light can separate 7 colors of light. And 7 colors of light, plus black and white, can modulate all colors in the world. Gretel sighed pitifully. It's terrible to be uneducated. As long as someone conducts a prism experiment on the sun god, he also knows the simplest scientific principle. However, the shot was a white light. It seems that this legend is the orthodoxy of the glorious Holy See? Greet thought silently. However, the sun god's next words instantly made his heart skip a beat. Every ray of light, every color, is condensed with very terrifying things, countless debris, countless particles, they pray, praise, and sing to another existence. For a moment, Gretel's hair stood on end. Countless particles, countless detritus that can pray, praise, and sing. What's this? What are these things? For a moment, he thought of Heaven Mountain and the Heaven Mountain that he had witnessed with his own eyes and came to earth in the legendary battle. In that pure, white, and glorious 7-story mountain, farmers farmed, craftsmen made, warriors trained, and priests sang. What if those figures are not illusions simulated by magic, but real ones? Year after year, generation after generation, where are the souls of all the devout believers under the glorious Holy See? In peacetime, he provides strength to the Holy See in Heaven Mountain, but in wartime, he even becomes the Holy See's most powerful weapon. What about the so-called paradise? What about the so-called eternal life? What about the so-called eternal joy and peace that God promises devout believers? Those debris, what kind of power do they have? Greet asked tremblingly. Virakaka, the sun god, roared. They transform my power. Devour my power. I have to use many times more power to destroy them and burn them. If these debris are really believers of the Lord of Glory, then the essential gap in power will cause Virakaka to suffer a great loss. After all, the glorious Holy See's understanding and research of light is obviously superior to this indigenous sun god. Greet sighed softly. In the sky, golden mist rolled, and Virakaka roared angrily. I need your power. Gretel, if it's not a blood sacrifice, I need your power to destroy them. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1170. That's what it is. After chatting with the sun god alone, Gretel sat among the people and told him everything he saw, knew, and thought. After finishing speaking, he rubbed his forehead depressedly. It says that extremely powerful power is needed to eliminate the imprint left by the legendary power of the glorious Holy See in the body. Either a very large-scale blood sacrifice must be launched, or the feedback of a higher nature, the will of the world, must be used. Don't you already have a plan? Archmage Baebo asked in surprise. Didn't you already plan to let it extinguish the flames of the forest and obtain the gifts of the world? But what if this method fails? Gretel continued to scratch his hair. He didn't care too much whether an indigenous sun god died, but he couldn't bear the thought that if the treatment failed, the indigenous sun god would devour the entire kingdom's population and use a large-scale blood sacrifice to treat the injuries. Besides, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Let the power of the glorious Holy See expand and let this land completely fall into the hands of the glorious Holy See. This is definitely not a good thing for the Parliament. If this sun god could be cured, or at least partially cured. When the Holy See of Glory comes, let the sun god lead the natives under his command to resist vigorously, even if they clash with each other, both sides will suffer losses. Isn't this better than the entire kingdom, millions of people, and massive wealth falling into the hands of the glorious Holy See, and then the parliament slowly fighting back in the future? In case this method fails, what I originally thought was to do a few more experiments, write 2 papers, and get some gifts from the world. But that would be a loss. That is equivalent to using your own power to feed the sun god. Feed a being above a legend. That power must be so huge, if not done well, it would be enough for him to advance from level 12 to level 13, and throw in the power of the first level, and the other party wouldn't even belch, but would complain, it's not enough at all. 2 or 3 times more. Tisk, I feel so embarrassed just thinking about it. Then what do you think? Archmage Baebo stared at his junior brother. Gee, I always feel that although the younger junior brother is talking to everyone, 80% of the attention is on him. In other words, this kid is making his own plans. Is there anything that he has an idea for, but can't do it, so he needs help from a high-level mage like himself? Could it be another whimsical idea? Well, senior brother, according to himself, this sun god has mastered the power of light and heat. Gretel hesitated. I'm thinking, as an alternative, is it possible that you can throw a few meteor blasts, sun blasts, or something similar into his wounds to burn off a little of the alien power entrenched in his body? By the way, you can also study him. Archmage Baebo wanted to give Gretel a hard time, but under Cyrilla's eager gaze, he raised and lowered his hand. He wanted to hit him with a bunch of magic missiles, but he lacked the teacher's control. In the end, I just rolled my eyes. What do you think meteor explosion is? What is Yang Yan explosion? Do you think I can rub it casually, rub it whenever I want, dozens of times a day? Do you think I am you, that sun god is willing to let go of his power? Let me watch or even attack its wounds. Yes, plan 1 failed. Undaunted, Greet kept up his efforts and proposed a second plan. There is another plan. When I heard you talk about the teacher's recent research last night, I think this plan is not very feasible. Maybe it needs to be modified. No, I think. The 2 senior brothers, Bala Bala, were having a lively discussion. Beside the long table, Cyrilla went from being very excited to looking confused, then grabbing the fruits and snacks on the table and nibbling them to keep herself from falling asleep. Idion also wanted to understand what they were talking about. His ears stood up for a long time, and all kinds of unheard nouns rolled by. He could only turn his eyes to Luoxia for help. Luoxia stared and thought without saying a word, and beads of sweat gradually appeared on her forehead. After listening for a long time, he sighed softly. Is it true that the subject of the legendary Archmage's research is too difficult? Even though she is an elf magician with a profound background in magic, she still doesn't understand the content of their research. But by the way, as a 12th level magician, Gretel has just advanced. Why can he talk so happily with Archmage Baebo? You mean, let the sun god help with the experiment? Archmage Baebo looked at Gretel in disbelief, looking up and down, as if he were watching a humanoid self-propelled natural disaster. Let it do all these experiments again? To get feedback from the world? Before that, let me teach it how to do the experiments. Hey! Gretel spread out his hands confidently. Elder brother, when a magician explores the world, will he get feedback from the will of the world? Can he also get a share of helping with experiments? If we do some experiments, will it be beyond our capabilities or too difficult to do? Dangerous. So are you planning to trick the indigenous sun god into doing this? Aren't you afraid that his hands are too rough and his hand slips during an experiment and he explodes something that shouldn't be fried? Of course I'm afraid, so senior brother, you see, I have no intention of letting the sun god screen and gather the isotope that the teacher found. The isotope that he suspected was uranium-235. If he gave the purification array to the sun god, or simply gave the sample to the sun god, and let him screen a batch, not too much, just tens of kilograms. What will happen if it really gathers? Boom. Gretel gestured. Probably, it's several times to dozens of times more powerful than the burning waterfall last time, right? Look, he is already very conscientious, at least he didn't let the sun god purify uranium-235. Greet thought confidently. Are you going to treat his injury, or are you going to blow it up? Archmage Baebo shook his head and sighed. If it really comes like this, the powerful energy that the sun god wants will be enough. However, whether this energy can destroy the alien power of the glorious Holy See or tear the sun god into pieces is another matter. I definitely can't do this, Greet spread his hands innocently. If this happens, the pollution of the elf secret realm will be out of control. He is here to control pollution. It's not meant to spread pollution. The so-called dropping a hydrogen bomb to eliminate nuclear power plant explosion pollution is just a joke and cannot be taken seriously. Also, if the sun god really controls this power, and a nuclear bomb is fired every 3 days, the elves who are neighbors with him will still be unable to survive. Master Baebo held his forehead. Alas, the higher the little guy's level, the greater his ability to cause trouble. As a senior brother, he had to watch. After everything was arranged, everyone filled all their space equipment with borax and lead and set off back to the elf forest. The high priest specially assigned a sun goddess to accompany them. In the hands of the sun goddess, she held a disc made of gold, which was filled with fluctuations of divine power. Obviously, if the distance is too far and the sun god cannot descend smoothly, this artifact will come in handy. After flying all the way, 10 tons of borax and 10 tons of lead were piled at the entrance of the elf secret realm, where the flames were faintly puffed out. Okay, shall we get started? Who will send these things in? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1171. Idian and Rosia stood side by side, staring at the entrance to the elven secret realm where the flames were swallowing. Sarala looked tense, standing next to Gretel, kicking in front and behind, ready to block him at any time. Obviously, the Silver Dragon girl is very wary of the dangers in the elven secret realm, and she does not have 100% trust in the defensive magic brought by Archmage Baebo. In any case, Gretel is not wearing full-body lead armor now, nor is he hiding in a bunker-like bunker. If the defensive magic fails, or there is a loophole or something, he will have a big problem. Relax. Archmage Baebo glanced at her and smiled slightly. He patted Greet on the shoulder. This magic was researched by Your Excellency Space-Time Barrier. After studying the properties of several rays, you made comprehensive improvements to several magics such as ray deflection, hidden mist, and rainbow halo, the targeted defense magic developed. Obviously, the magicians, especially the legendary magicians, would not even die if they were asked to wear a suit of lead to work like Gretel asked. If there is magic, you must use magic. Moreover, after Your Excellency Time Barrier developed this magic, you used your cloud chamber magic, the vacuum tube developed by Phil Bigson, and all your demi-planes to test it. The protective effect. It's obviously very good, isn't it? Gretel looked up with a smile. If it wasn't good, you wouldn't let me use it. In fact, the real value of this kind of magic lies not in its effectiveness, but in its low casting level, cheap materials, and long duration. The third ring spell only requires a small piece of lead to last for a full 12 hours. This also means that half-step legends like Idian who take the warrior route can also cast spells on their own without having to drag a spellcaster into the secret realm. Of course, this thing can't withstand an explosion. However, it can already effectively defend against the ubiquitous radiation that permeates the polluted areas outside the secret realm. Archmage Baebo authorized this magic to the elves, and then he gained the qualification to enter the outskirts of the contaminated area and personally observe the secret realm. Of course, Gretel's matchmaking is also essential. He patted Greet and stepped on the ground casually, causing the ground to sink silently. Greet only felt a slight weightlessness in his body. When he recovered, he was already standing in a pit 2 meters deep and 2 meters in radius. The soil solidifies, transforms, and turns into solid, heavy stone. A meter-thick stone wall rose across the sky, forming a curved dome above their heads. "Come on, let's just stay here and watch, let the master here do the work of contributing." Greet smiled sheepishly. Compared to magic, physical defense really made him feel safer. Senior brother really understands him. He sat down quietly, observing the movements of the outside world through the secret eye screen. When Archmage Baebo built this observation bunker, he specially set aside structures for observation and sound transmission, and also sent out a dozen small alchemy puppets. Some are buried in the grass, some are scattered in rings around the bunker, and some are rolling to the edge of the secret realm, as if they are ready to follow and explore at any time. And these alchemy puppets are transmitting data to them in various ways. Soon, sonorous and powerful chants came from both sides of the bunker. The sun goddess is holding a disc in her hands, standing upright, with a solemn and pious look. As she chanted, the golden disc gradually glowed golden, and her long hair also became windless, and golden light gradually flowed from her eyes. Luoxia held the staff with both hands, and mysterious spells came out of her mouth word by word. On the summoning array in front of him, all the lines, spells, and magic crystals began to emit a thick yellow light. Gradually, a round-headed, stocky earth elemental that was bigger than Gretel saw last time emerged from the summoning array. The sun god has called to the scene. The earth element is summoned to the scene. The earth element entered the secret realm and began to change the terrain, first break a small section of the burning mineral vein from the main vein. Gretel muttered something and brushed up the records. When he turned around, Archmage Baebo's expression was much more serious than his. "There is a mage tower core in front of you. There are countless observation hubs connected to the core, and large tracts of data are constantly scrolling. Environmental background spell strength. The spell intensity near the sun god, the distance is 5 meters, 10 meters, 15 meters. The strength of spells near the earth element." Gretel held his breath and concentrated, not daring to disturb him at all. Such a rare research opportunity. Such a rare data collection opportunity. The teacher and several other legendary masters must have brought all the equipment they can to the senior brother. There may only be one opportunity to enter the secret realm of the elves, conduct on-site observations, and collect data on-site. Next time, a human archmage like senior brother may not be allowed to enter. I don't know how many years it will take until he grows up enough to protect himself and enter the secret realm to operate. Here we go. Archmage Baebo suddenly shouted. Greet was startled and looked attentively, only to see the earth elemental shaking his body back to the outside of the secret realm and swooping down. The yellow body made of soil flows and melts, covering the borax and lead. So let the earth element do the work. Gretel was stunned. This earth elemental was obviously a head taller than the one that was summoned at the entrance of the mine before, and its body was also a bit larger. It was probably a level higher. I don't know if Luja put in a lot of effort this time, or if Elder Fahim brought out something from his private collection. It can absorb 10 tons of borax and 10 tons of lead in one breath. This earth element is very powerful. When the earth element stood up unsteadily again, its entire body was composed of borax and lead. Take one step and the borax will fall down. Take 2 steps and a small piece of broken lead will fall down. It's like a garbage truck, walking all the way, shaking all the way, and falling all the way. Fall in front of the short section of mineral vein where it splits, and jump down. The borax and broken lead all over the body collapsed in with a crash. In fact, even the earth element itself collapsed into the veins. The next moment, the entire mineral vein swelled, swelled, and sunk slightly, as if it had entered a mixer, stirring gently but very efficiently. Really, I stir myself. An alchemy puppet rushed forward bravely and jumped in. At the last moment before landing on the surface of the vein, it stretched out two pointed cones and fixed itself on the wall of the vein. The front of the puppet's head opened, revealing an electronic tube. As soon as it was exposed, it screamed "di-di-di-di-di." Reading, 123086, 57984, 38765. Archmage Bayabo looked at the numbers on the light screen with a serious face. In fact, you don't need to look at the readings, just look at the scene on the secret eye screen. You can also find the flames are dying. In the small area of the mine that was cut off, the endless flames that had not been extinguished for thousands of years really, slowly, began to extinguish. As the flames extinguished, the summoned earth element emitted a warm white light. It has advanced, this time. Luja's voice trembled, and Idion spoke with surprise. Even after being summoned, the sun god attached to the sun goddess subconsciously took half a step forward. This earth element, by virtue of its ability to extinguish the flames, actually, truly, received a gift from the world, and passed the threshold of advancement that was difficult for elemental creatures and required thousands of years to wait. As long as he has this gift of power, he will be willing to take over the earth element's job. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @MingJinkingLian for the reward of 500 starting coins. Pi a new book. The Holy King of the Martial Temple is my father. Veteran Li Fen traveled back to Zhao State, and the chaotic historical line coincided with the late Northern Song dynasty. He was looking for Yufei in this world, trying to change the outcome of the Han people's national subjugation and genocide, but he didn't know that he had obtained the script of Yu Yun, and his destiny was to at the execution ground at the age of 13, Li Feng awakened and began to redeem himself. If fate was determined by fate, it would be broken. Newbies and new books, please support me. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 1172. No, no, you don't have to dig it yourself. No, 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 the sun god in the sky is not suitable for digging into mines. No, 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 your magical blessings are not directed toward prospecting, mining, or maintaining the safety of mines. Gretel rubbed his forehead in annoyance and tried his best to dissuade him. Sun god Virakaka, calm down. If you don't want every corner job, grab it. Some jobs are not suitable for you at all. Oh, what a sin. The glory holy sea is so evil. Seeing how far this injury has pushed the sun god, they are willing to put down their bodies and go mining. Greed thought about the way the eagle god from the eagle kingdom gathered his feathers, jumped up and down, and burrowed into the underground cave like the snake god, and felt it was irritating. What's more, this is not the eagle god with a physical body, but the illusory sun god. The disc held in the hands of the sun goddess kept making strange noises. At the edge of the disc, the golden light flickered, rising and shrinking. At a glance, it looked like a TV screen that was about to break or was seriously disturbed. Mr. Gretel, what you said makes sense. I don't know if the sun god is too excited, or if the long-distance communication is not smooth, or if he is interfered by the powerful radiation source nearby. In short, the sounds coming from the sun goddess's mouth were sometimes loud and sometimes small, sometimes sharp and sometimes soft. I thought about it. I don't need to do the mining myself. Just let all my citizens work. Within 10 days, before you arrive, you will be able to dig enough mines. No, 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 you don't have to drive all the citizens to mine. Gretel was sweating. Don't let novices mine, the efficiency is very, very low, and large-scale mining accidents can kill people, no less than blood sacrifices. Who will help him? Unfortunately, there was no one to help him. No matter it is Idian, Luja, or senior brother Sarara and Baebo, the sun god Virakaka does not believe in any of them. All the negotiation tasks, all the responsibilities of persuading the sun god and saving the indigenous peoples, all rest on Gretel's shoulders. Look, no matter how many people you have, you will only have so many experienced people. The mine is narrow and the area that can be mined is only so large. Even if you transfer people there en masse, you won't be able to dig in, right? Moreover, you now have a very large demand for the power of faith of the people. It will not be good for you to recruit a large number of people to mine, whether it is boiling public dissatisfaction or famine and death caused by production disorders. Instead of sending people to dig, let us dispatch the earth element. Just prepare the reward for the caster and the reward for the earth element. We can start digging as soon as we arrive at the kingdom. The working speed of the earth element, quickly. The light on the sun's disk gradually stabilized, and the intense expansion, contraction, and flashing became gentle and regular little by little. Gretel looked at the fluctuation of the golden light and suddenly wanted to record it. He even plugged in 2 wires on the spot. Could this thing be some kind of explicit brainwave? Oops, I really want to study it. Well, if you let the earth element work, how long will it take? As Gretel wandered into the sky, the golden light on the sun's disk finally stopped fluctuating. The sun goddess who acted as a carrier raised her head and said in a light voice, "We can at least find 10 spellcasters." 10 spellcasters and 10 earth elements to work together, Gretel said without even thinking about it. As long as there are enough mines, the mining work can be completed in 10 days at most. Including the time it takes us to rush over, it can be completed in 20 days at most. If you issue an oracle and start mobilizing manpower now, enough mines can be mined in 20 days really? You can't, right? The sun's disk flashed again. The golden light flows in the eyes of the sun goddess. So, what kind of reward do you want? Sister Loxia. Senior brother. Come here. How much does it cost to work as an earth element? I don't know. In short, after successfully demonstrating that healing the wounds of the earth can really bring gifts from the world, Gretel successfully reached an agreement with Virakaka, the sun god. To put it simply, the sun god provides mines, rewards for spellcasters, rewards for earth elements, and power magic crystals for airships to travel back and forth, allowing earth elements to mine enough minerals. Then, the sun god came to the elven secret realm, wrapped up all the borax and lead, and spread them evenly into the earth and into the burning veins, so as to extinguish the eternal flames in the secret realm for thousands of years. Now, we have borax and lead after the divine descent. The sun goddess was placed next door to rest. Greet stood among a group of elves, looking very energetic. We don't have to pay for it out of our own pockets, and we don't have to get in touch with the mine owners one by one. Everything is handled by the temple of the sun god. They pay for the earth elements, transport the things in, and the most dangerous work is done by the sun god. Complete it myself. The important thing is to turn the needs and tasks of the elves into the needs and tasks of the sun god himself. Perfect. Yes, little Gretel, very well done. Elder Fahim, who came after the divine descent, stroking his long white beard, smiled and nodded in approval. In this case, all we need to do is summon the earth element, communicate with the earth element, and transport the ore. Well, speaking of freight. Greet's face turned bitter. These days, they have roughly piled up models of the elf secret realm and calculated the amount of ore that may be needed. 100,000 tons of borax and 100,000 tons of lead. At least this amount is needed to ensure that the eternal flame of the elven secret realm is extinguished. 200,000 tons. 200,000 tons of mineral sand were transported across thousands of miles from a plateau with an altitude of more than 3,000 meters to the hinterland of the rainforest. It would take 2 months to travel by land, by water, from the mountains to the hinterland of the forest. There are rapids and shoals. The fastest way is to transport by air, but the load capacity of air transport is a very big problem. In Gretel's previous life, the largest transport aircraft, the N-225, had a maximum load capacity of 250 tons in the cargo compartment and a maximum load of 200 tons on the top of the fuselage. Use this giant thing to transport 200,000 tons of ore. How many trips will it take? Or, how many N-225s are needed? Gretel didn't want to think about it. He looked at Elder Fahim longingly, took out the old vine bird, and held it up in front of him. Elder, do you have any space equipment at the bottom of the box? I really can't transport that much. Although the loading capacity of the Gyuteng bird is powerful, it is only comparable to the ordinary space equipment of magicians. An ordinary space bag can hold 1 or 2,000 pounds, which is already considered large, but the ancient vine bird can hold more than 10 or 20 tons, which is no problem at all. However, 100 tons is the limit. What kind of magician goes out and pretends to be 100 tons of crazy people? However, 200,000 tons is equal to 2,100 tons. Well, let me take care of this matter myself. Elder Fahim smiled slightly. The solutions to some problems are not what you think. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1173. Another solution. Gretel's eyes lit up. He subconsciously leaned forward and rested his elbows on the table. Elder, please tell me. He really can't think of any good solution. He went through all the ways he could think of, and he came up with them one by one and rejected them one by one. If he wasn't really at his wit's end, he would have made arrangements for this matter directly and wouldn't bother others. Please let me know. Spoilers please. At least, please give me a hint. Well, reveal. Elder Fahim smiled slightly. He squinted his eyes and glanced across the group of people around the table from left to right. Idian, Luja, Anari Ling, Cyrilla, Archmage Baebo, Bernard. Oh, this doesn't count. He picked up the teacup, let the hot steam in the cup hit his face, took a deep sniff, and then said leisurely. Wait a minute before revealing anything. Come on, think about it for yourselves first. How can we transport 100,000 tons of Ueming sand and 100,000 tons of lead blocks here? Is this the teacher starting a quiz in class? Are all teachers in the world the same? They drop a question whenever they disagree. Greet quietly shrank back. Turning his eyes, Archmage Baebo frowned and was thinking hard. He didn't seem to be planning to evade this class test just because Elder Fahim was not his teacher. As for the elves, they were thinking more and more seriously and devotedly. Even Cyrilla stretched out a finger and made signs on the table. Everyone present, apart from Gretel who had already racked his brains to think of a plan and was sure that none of them would be useful, only Bernard was left relaxed. Sitting in the corner of the table, I secretly reached out to touch the cookies piece by piece, and quietly stuffed them into my mouth. The old man smiled warmly at Bernard. Wait patiently for a while and then ask your name. Yudian, tell me. Build a road in the middle of the forest and use giant beasts to pull it. Idian answered hesitantly. Seeing a look of disapproval in the old man's eyes, he quickly added. We can discuss with the trees along the way and let them move out of the way on their own. This will cause the least damage to the forest. As for transporting it down from the mountain, fossils to mud and mud to stone can be used repeatedly, just build a slide, got it? Gretel closed his eyes as he listened. Elder Fahim has already called his name. Gretel, what do you think? I'm definitely not Yuan Fang, no, I definitely don't agree with this idea. Not to mention that when trees move out of the way, other trees, weeds, mosses, and insects will follow suit. Not to mention the canyons, rivers, and waterfalls along the way, how to build roads across mountains and bridges over water. Not to mention the road that can be pulled by giant beasts, for example, 2,000 heavy-duty trucks like 100-ton King, or 100 giant beasts running back and forth 20 times, how wide and how many roads need to be built. Solid. Not to mention whether such a road leading directly to the center of the secret realm is tantamount to pointing the way for subsequent invasions. Not to mention the indigenous people, how can they transport 200,000 tons of ore over the mountains and ridges on a plateau with an average altitude of more than 3,000 meters and a peak that may exceed 6,000 meters to the mountain closest to the rainforest? How much labor and death are involved? How many people? Greet slowly picked a fault. I was thinking about how big a crater would be if 200,000 tons of ore slid down from a 3,000-meter mountain and hit the ground. Falling from an altitude of 3,000 meters, the speed when it hits the ground seems to be 30,000 meters per square second. 200,000 tons of ore, even if the force is partially offset by the friction of the slide, even if it falls in batches, the intensity of the impact. Probably, maybe, it is still smaller than the asteroid hitting the Earth, right? It would be better to combine borax and lead into a huge sphere, summon it with the meteorite technique, and smash it directly into the center of the elf secret realm. I just said that warriors are not suitable to think about this. Idion's face suddenly darkened. He muttered and rubbed back. If you have anything to do, just leave it to me. Soldiers are not meant to think about this. So, maybe, you are just responsible for the warm-up? Gretel complained silently. Elder Fahim has already named the second name. Luja, what do you think? I thought maybe I could turn to the plants in the forest. The female spellcaster said slowly while thinking. Let them connect branches to branches and leaves to leaves. Branches to branches can support these ores, leaves are connected to leaves. Through the fluctuation of leaves, they can be connected to form a long pipe. Relay each other, send these ores to the center of the forest. Halfway through her words, Greed had already begun to calculate. The leaves are connected together. According to the strength of the leaves in the rainforest, how many kilograms of ore can each meter of leaf, or in other words, each meter of pipe, support without breaking, leaking, or collapsing? 50 kilograms. 100 kilograms. Even if it is 1 ton, that means that all the ore will pull out a pipeline of 200,000 meters, that is, 200 kilometers. The limited number of elves in the rainforest must constantly rush within these 200 kilometers to find the location of every pipeline leak and provide the trees with natural power. Is the power of nature enough? I have no idea. Luja shook her head blankly. She said she didn't know, but in fact, her intuition was already calling the police. Definitely not enough. It will definitely be a very large project, and it will definitely not be enough. This is a backup plan. It will not be used unless there is no other way. Elder Fahim made a clear judgment. Then, he turned to his disciple, the healer Anari Ling. What's your plan? Anari Ling's face turned bitter. A teacher is a teacher, be lenient to others and be strict with yourself, they have already explained all the simple methods. When it was her turn, there was only a more difficult method left. I thought maybe I could use transformation to create a batch of huge balloons to hold things in. She said hesitantly. If it is filled with hot air, it can fly higher. By heating the air, the sun god can take action. Anyway, it already has a lot of light and heat. As for pulling these airships, can we ask the flying monsters in the forest to help? Have you examined the wind blowing from the mountains to the forest and what kind of wind it blows in what season? Elder Fahim asked this question right out of the gate. Anari Ling hesitated for a moment and shook his head. I haven't studied it in detail, I only know that the airflow in the mountains is very, very chaotic. Greet was stunned when he heard it. Good guy, this is the idea of Led Zeppelin. The problem is that the Zeppelin airship, even a giant airship more than 200 meters long, has a carrying capacity of only a few hundred tons. Your plan requires 1,000 Zeppelins. Not to mention whether your transfiguration processing ability is enough, the Zeppelin airship can be built to be so big because it is a rigid airship. The outside of the airship is an aluminum shell. Oh, the first generation seems to have a wooden shell with cotton containing hydrogen inside. Is your material strong enough for the giant balloon you used to transform? How much magic power or natural force is needed to increase the strength of the material? Have you ever thought about how much larger a hot air balloon needs to be to carry the same load capacity compared to a hydrogen balloon? Elder Fahim is obviously not very optimistic about this plan either. He made a few brief comments, and finally turned his attention to Archmage Baebo. Not to mention Gretel, what kind of thinking ability and imagination will this foreign high-level human mage have? The elf elders, who have not communicated with the human magic world for many years and only made judgments through journals, really want to experience it intuitively. Archmage Baebo pondered for a moment and said slowly, I do have a way. However, this method is very demanding. Maybe only legends can do it. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of